Welcome to Warblog. Today I'm going to play this, Recapture of Tripoli. It's actually still ongoing at the moment, but it's a massive map, so I'm just going to sort of jump straight into it really. It's not sort of map that is picture perfect. The only thing that is worth noting about this is that there's a whole bunch of factions. Let's just go back maybe. Obviously there's the Libyan National Army. There's quite a lot of units, air power, air defence, but the GNA, for example, we've got, well, basically, where did it? We'll get them in the top sort of 8 here. 33rd Infantry Brigade, the Abu Ubaidah al-Zohar Forces, Al-Halbas Brigade, Al-Mujub Brigade, Al-Nusay Brigade, Special Deterrence Force, Tripoli Revolutionaries Brigade, the Usama al-Juwaili Forces, etc. And then they get sort of duplicated down there. So, but basically, what I'm saying is, although they all look like brown counters, they're all quite specific. So there's Tripoli Revolutionary Brigade, so that'll be TRB on the side there. There is TRB, and then there's GL, GNA, etc. So basically, what I'm saying is it's quite specific in that sort of sense. So they're not just as generic as they look. The LNA is. The next thing to maybe just sort of quickly point out is, now I can't remember exactly how it works, but they've sort of got a pocket like that, and it goes up I'm pretty sure it actually goes up a bit like this. Although to be quite honest, I think it's actually probably more as I sort of had it. That's the sort of border-ish. Now this might actually be more like that, and that's sort of wrong. And they're going for Tripoli, which is up there, and this actually has, this is the earlier stage. I chose this one mainly because of all the counters, but maybe I should have chosen the other one actually. So the other one, the other map is sort of more like that, I think. So it's closer, and it's the same number of counters just all shoved in that singular box. Now, when I did this, I mean, I sort of had advanced knowledge, but at this stage, and that sort of reflected the items as they are in the sort of whatever reference material I use, probably South Front. Essentially, I'd already sort of known that the advance was coming in more towards Tripoli, but when this was first announced, it wasn't known, and so there was sort of, they were just saying they're advancing on Tripoli, but they didn't know quite where. I think one of the interesting things to note on this was that the leaders of the LNA sort of stated that within a month Libya would be under a single rule, and it sounded as though this was a breakthrough in diplomacy, but presumably they had this planned. And so it was sort of, when the hostilities were sort of announced, you know, you sort of think, well, what are they doing? Are they continuing? Because I think there was talk that they were continuing towards Sirte, which I think is under there. So basically, they were pushing along here, and it was sort of the next battle is going to be here, and they were slowly edging their way up along here to here, and that was sort of to some extent what I thought their plan of action was going to be, and that's why I sort of included this whole map. But obviously, what they've actually done is they're pushing up there past the airport, and they've sort of got this pocket here, which is a bit odd, but there's sort of a little gap down there that they can get through. But they're sort of pushing up towards there, and I think the battle scope is probably all within this now, a box like that. So, you know, we're not going to do the assault on Libya sort of quite like that, but I thought I'd just play this one because there's so many sort of pieces, and it's such a big map. It's sort of one that I don't think it's particularly sort of specific or accurate in any place. It's very rough, but with that in mind, sort of thinking, well, I might not even play a turn. I'm just sort of thinking, well, how would I do it? You know, obviously the two objectives are over here, Let me get the map tool out again. There's an objective there, 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 and there, and they all have their specific values. So this one's the furthest away from anything. So we could possibly get to it through there. This one should be easy enough. And this will probably be a toughie because there'll be a front line like that. And that's going to be super tough, but in theory it's only a couple of hexes away. I mean, we could move into there, attack, and move into there. So I think that's sort of a rough overview of what's what. But what I'm going to do is continue drawing stuff, because essentially I think, you know, if you're thinking, well, you know, if you were a field marshal, what would you be thinking? Well, it seems when you play a game, you sort of just go and do loads and loads of things. But I think in this, I'd sort of say, well, I'm gonna have a couple of objectives. For example, I'm going to remove this counter first, and then set a firm line along there, because that's sort of what we've got. I might say I'm going to hold all of this, but then consolidate that by pushing these units out. So basically getting rid of these. That might be my objectives. And I'll say, well, once I've done that, then I can fill this line up. I can push sort of, you know, these units up here, complete the line along there, and end up for sort of, you know, so basically just doing that operation there. Try and somehow possibly consolidate here, but I'm not sure whether there's any sort of easy way. For example, we could take this unit out with a lot of these units. The only thing to say, actually, I've just remembered, so I'll just maybe sort of point it out or note it. The units up here are quite thin. So looking at these ones, they're quite thin on the ground. So you sort of say, well, okay, well, we haven't got much here. How are we going to face these units off? How are we going to face these ones? The thing to note is there's massive reinforcements. It's 4, 4, 4, 4, 2, 4, 4. You know, these are all the items, and so it's worth sort of thinking about where everything is. So we've got tanks, mechanized, motorized. And so it might be, you know, I think part and parcel of it would be to sort of say, well, what we're going to do. Now, getting the drawing tool out, you can sort of say, well, we've got quite a sizable force here. And similarly here, 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 and basically there. I mean, obviously all this stuff is front line stuff. So if we define the front lines just quickly, just again, we can sort of say we've got that, and that. We can then sort of say, well, where are we going to take these units? Now, this force, for example, we could say, well, so when you've got the line, it makes a lot more sense. We can say, well, we're going to take it as they did up this road. They might say, well, this is what this road is all about. So we want to take this road and go straight up there into Tripoli. And everything else is going to be on a holding. So everything else is going to try and sort of maintain and hold the line. So you can say, well, how far can we get up there? But the thing is, there's a couple of things. First of all, we've got to secure the road. And so the road goes up like this, for example. And so we got this exerting a zone of control that needs to go, this exerting a zone of control, this exerting a zone of, and all of this line is going to have to be pushed all the way back. So we'd have to push back all of those units basically we have to push that line back to there. Not impossible. Alternatively, we could say, well, we're going to send all these units this way and just go ploughing straight through that. Or, and I like to think sort of out of the box. I don't think yellow is going to work. Oh, we'll give it a go. Yeah, not too bad. Or we could just sort of push it this way, like that. And you could say, well, what's the point in that? Well, the point in that is we're thinking. We're thinking, well, we could. This is the main bulk of troops. We could push it that way, and we should say, well, why would we want to do that? We might want to just create this huge wedge here that basically drives up, and every time we sort of push forward, things can then fall in behind or come in from the side, or it can start to sort of, you know, basically we could keep. I always quite often think of the hammer and anvil scenarios. But to some extent, this isn't really a hammer and anvil, but you could. It's sort of viewable in a certain sense in the same light. You've got a major pushing force pushing things back, and it's just like, you know, forces, you know, just in physics. You know, if everything was made of plasticine, you can get a big piece of wood here and just push it this way, and you know, but that would, you know, on its own it might not be enough, but if we were to do that, that would be almost everything. That's all our sort of reserves. It's all our sort of, you know, our hammerhead, so to speak, of whatever strategy we choose, pushed this way and basically, you know, doubled up. Now the thing is, they've chosen to go this way, and it could be that they just want to get a quick win, but it's obviously slowing them down at the moment. But, you know, they've got the road. Now the thing is, just to say that, I mean, I had no idea where they were, or where these, you know, this is just me putting things here, so this might not be how the situation is at all. You know, they probably, I think it's fairly certain to say they weren't considering the same things that I'm considering, but from a modelling perspective and simulation perspective, we don't know what they were thinking, and so we could sort of say, well, this is probably not too far off, and then you can say, well, what were they thinking, and you know, what was the situation before, and you know, that would take some sort of research, etc., and thinking about. And as I said, it is really, other than the fact that these are very specific units, it is just sort of clumped together as it is. You know, there's no sort of particular structure or order in where the units are, but having them fall where they fall gives us a starting point for considering that, etc., etc. But I don't know what I want to do. I just want to do sort of the first turn because I don't want to do a lot. I'm more in relaxed mode really, but I think I'm going to try. See, I mean, you could take this, you just push them this way, but I think what I'm going to try and do is do what I did here. I'm going to try and take as much of this road as I can. That's what I'm going to do, and everything else is going to be saying what's what and how we're going to defend against it, with the option of taking this unit here out to then create this sort of straight line. So probably a lot more drawing to be done. So what I'm thinking, see, first of all I want to say, okay, well, there's a big stack there, and they're not going to get anywhere else anytime soon. But what I'm sort of saying, I want to figure out what's what, and I'll show you what I mean. I mean, for example, we've got 4 units there, so we need something to defend against that. We've got 1 unit there, 1 there, we've got a bulk there, 1 there, and then we've got a line there, a small line there, 1 there, one there, and one there, and a big line there, and obviously this sort of pocket here. Now it might look like I could just draw on the front line again, but what I'm trying to do is a little more sort of planned, so to speak. So on that, we can then say, okay, there's 4 units. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 units. I'm going to spin these units here to face that, covering this. I'm not sure which hexes to cover, but basically they're going to sit in as many of these places as possible to create that front line. Now I'm not going to attack because that's not the line of attack. So that's all those units. These units, and what I'm going to do with these units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. See, what I'm going to try and do is get these units there. These units will fall behind. These units will try and get there as well, and then these are going to go against that, and we'll probably be stuck here. They're going to have to, if they want to get anywhere further sort of west, they're going to have to attack that. So that will go against that. That will go against that. We'll probably have to fall something back here to push that back. Probably use these forces essentially to counter that, possibly counter that, moving him up there. Now this is going to be a lot harder, but we can push him up there to create this sort of line along there, and we've got to push these guys back, so we can maybe start pushing for these 2 hexes in the first instance, pushing back on this hex, and just creating a line of stability. So we've got this unit here, so that can counter that. This is the one where it's the hardest, so we can probably use these to fill in these 2 gaps. So that's those 2 gaps there, and that it's a bit weak in that area. But I think if we sort of try something like that, so in the first instance, I think what I want to do is try my luck on this hex here. It's a shame I can't save these images. I could have did a screenshot, but then I could refer to it as a plan. I do have plans, or I have had thoughts to integrate blob technology or blob functionality to create a screenshot that you could then reload just for general reference, but because that's my battle plan. I like these drawings, I do. So I want to take that out. First thing to note, it's 6 in defense and we've got 12. Well, I think it's going to be a no-brainer really. It's going to be a 2-to-1. It's not quite. There's no way we're going to get a 3-to-1 out of that. Exchange. Wow, we could have used some of these air units first. It's an interesting war at the moment because they've both got what I describe as legacy air forces, and when I mean legacy, they're really sort of more what they had left over from Libya as a country before the civil war, and they're hardly sort of like national powers able to really sort of to sort of fund modern fighter craft. And I think the LNA have lost one to some sort of anti-aircraft fire from the GNA, and you get the sense that that wasn't cheap. They've got they're flying these sort of sorties on a shoestring, so to speak. not quite a Battle of Britain, but they're saying that the UAE have been providing drones, and it all sort of fits together to be quite an interesting picture, really. If one side can sort of gain air superiority, then their air assets become massively worthwhile. But losing an aircraft is probably quite painful, and they simply can't really afford to lose them. And it comes back to that sort of scenario of better to keep them on the ground in the hangars safe, so that you can leverage the threat of using them rather than actually using them and losing them, using them and losing them, etc., etc. So, but anyway, that wasn't very good, because I was hoping to at least push them back to open up that sort of southern area. Well, it's 8, so that's going to be a 2-to-1 as well. Might as well just do it. Yeah, 3-to-1. DR 3-to-1 because they were infantry and we had mechanized. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're going to split that up there. Six. What we really want to do is push them back. Well, that doesn't work, does it? It's 2 failures so far. Just going to have to bring everyone. Okay. Oh, well, that was a turnaround. Right. So we can at least try. I'm not going any further there. We can get a little further with that guy. Well, armour versus infantry should be easy. And that pushes him back. So we've succeeded at least in pushing this road network back a little. That's a 6. And that's a 4. But we've got this big stack of 4 set on the road now. Okay. So what can we do here? Let's try everything against this unit. DR. An exchange. Oh well. That's given us part of our objectives. Giving us what I meant to do there was look at road. So we got the road free up to there. It's all outside of a zone of control. That zone of control doesn't extend into there. So that's our sort of like our head. So next we've got to do is try and move these, and then we can start moving these units up this road quickly. It's a shame we didn't manage to sort of make any ground over here. Oh, we did say we're going to push that guy back. And let's help them with their decision making here. Didn't need that much, did I? Oh well. Not sure it's worth attacking that. Okay, that's it on the first move, really. I'm not sure I want to play the next move. I think this is an interesting game, actually. I think these bigger ones just become interesting by default. But what I will do is consider the other person's turn. So I'll just go into it. Obviously we've got the front lines which are slightly redefined now. Like that. But there's a big gap there. So you sort of think, well, they don't really have enough. I mean, one of the things that I think is worth noting is that Libya is a big country. I mean, well, it's a country. It's big in a certain sense. In that they probably wouldn't move an entire front. They might not have done that attack there. We didn't attack there. And the only reason really did that attack was to sort of try and open up this line along here. But they probably wouldn't really be trying to sort of make strategic initiatives along here. The strategic initiative, I think, is quite clearly focused around Tripoli. So this does become a game, but you sort of think, well, what could we actually do here to sort of to help envelop and isolate this lot like that? Let's just reload this and get a decent pen out. Let's use red. I mean, we could say, okay, we're going to try and isolate these units and isolate these units and isolate these units from each other. So you've got 3 pockets, 1, 2 and 3. And so you could sort of say, well, okay, well, how can we possibly do that? Well, we could drive this wedge here, so we can maybe take that unit out, possibly, to make that small. So that would mean taking out both of these units, there and there. We can then also try to push through here to reduce this along like that by taking these units out, creating 1, 2, 3 hexes between these 2 units. Obviously filling this out by taking the line along like that, but also maybe, the thing is, we don't really have a lot of units to do this, but if we could push this down like this or like this, that would widen the gap. So we've got 3 spaces really, whilst at the same time trying to sort of form a solid line that they're not going to be able to take. Now the thing is it worth doing it? What are the other options? I think other options could very easily include falling back, so we're not worrying about that. So pushing these units back. Oh, I don't. Pushing them back as far this way to sort of create a line more like this. So all of these units would give ground in this direction, allowing us to put more force along the line here to repel this main attack going towards Tripoli. So in practice that would mean losing Sirte, giving up on Sirte. But I think all they're actually doing is, obviously they've got the front lines, the attacks are just coming in around here. I mean, I think they're sort of like that, and the attacks are sort of coming in through here, north of the airport, but they're also attacking back, so they're attacking out, and it's a bit of a stalemate. And what I will be doing in one of my next setups is that more detailed area. I'm not going to do this any more of this, but just to sort of put it into perspective, I'll have a quick look at the other one. So you can essentially see it's a lot nearer Tripoli, and we've got all these forces in pretty much the same sort of fashion coming out this road. And all, obviously the units are specified as I said before, but they're all in blocks. And that's a bit of a cheat because I'm just putting them there like that, but I'm pretty sure that as soon as you played this, you would expand these, you know, either creating a definite lines where they are or moving them north. But the line is definitely coming up this sort of area, and you've got the choice between these two roads, but you've got the airport there, and they're basically coming up here, attacking, and then they're being fought back. And I'm pretty sure that once you start to spread these out, because I mean there's exactly the same number of units here as there are in the other game, but the frontage isn't so wide. And the next one I'll do is probably a lot smaller, like that. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.